Hello guys, welcome to the second video in the series on how to build your hero in Age of Wonders 4. Today we will be detailing how to build the Death Knight. So the Death Knight is one of the two new hero classes introduced in the latest patch. I know it's not really like the latest anymore, it's not very recent, and I'm kinda outdated, but you know what, let's just roll with it. Without further ado, let's just hop in. Wait, not here. It's here, yes. So if you search on Google, you will find a very convenient website called the Age of Wonders 4 database, where you can just build out your faction and your hero and learn everything about the game, right? Just search on Google, Age of Wonders 4 faction builder, and click on this tab, click on hero builders. And I'm telling you, this game is so freaking awesome. There's so many things to learn. Go on the website and learn it. And you will get it. Under this tab, we can find Death Knight. And yes. Okay, so the Death Knight, we have 4 trees right here. So the first tree, I will call this a Berserker tree. Kind of the crit / Berserker tree. And then the second tree, this is kind of the classic melee warrior tree. This tree is the curse tree, the debuff tree, while this tree is the summoner tree, alright? So both of the berserker tree and the melee tree actually stems from the warrior. So if you take a look here, the warrior, it actually has most of the identical skills from the Death Knight, right? So Death Knight took these skills from the warrior, and they took the curse skill from the mage. So the thing to note is that, wait, this is the ritualist, not a mage, and this is not, wait, this is the mage, right? So the thing to note is that the Death Knight skills for the warrior tree, they are almost identical to the warrior. So everything they have, the warrior has, right? However, the curse tree is slightly different from the mage's tree. And to explain, we will read this out loud. For those who already know what all of the skill does and would just like my take on how to build a Death Knight, without me explaining everything for like a new player, for example, I will leave the timestamps down in the description and you can just teleport forward, quantum tunnel all the way there, alright? See ya later. But for those of you who like to hear me ramble and really hear an explanation of why we should choose something and not just I tell you this is good, this is bad, without you hearing the reasons, I think you should always listen and learn first. Just learn what the skills do themselves and learn to think for yourself. Because the Death Knight is actually a very, very versatile hero class. You don't really want to just stick to, oh, I always want to go the Berserker line for big killer momentum stuff, or you don't always want to just go, I'll go the debuff and summoning line. You can build the Death Knight in, I would say, 3 ways, alright? So the first way is actually to just go classic warrior, but then you also have a mass curse skill. This is super duper powerful. Plus you also get the early game tempo with the wyverns from the ritualist. And the second one is just you focus on survivability and debuffing and summoning. Alright, so one is debuff survival and the other one is debuff DPS. Alright, so I digress, okay? We digress back to the curse skill and the difference that it has with the mage class. So the curse skill, it's a 10 damage, frost damage, it's a free action, but it only has 1 range, alright? So if we look at the mage class, the curse deals the same amount of damage, but it's a single action. However, to make up for it, it has 6 range. So essentially for Death Knight to use a curse skill, you have to go up into someone's face and then curse them. So you're cursing someone right in front of their faces, which is kind of like a Giga Chat move, alright? So in this way, the mages are already, inferior. They're kind of just pussies hiding behind your front line and cursing the enemies that way. It's not very cool, but, it has its uses, alright? And the thing about Death Knight is that they have relatively the same skills as a warrior, but they lack many of the warrior skills that gives them like extra tankiness. So the Death Knight lacks survivability in a certain sense, but they make up for it with their debuff and summoning abilities, as compared to a warrior, alright? So, the curse skill is super powerful on the Death Knight, because it is a free action, right? The mages have it as one action, you use it, your turn is over. Like, your turn as a mage is over. But curse on a Death Knight, you can use it and then you can hit someone. And this, the crucial part is that you curse a target unit, you inflict 2 thunder defense for 3 turns, 2 thunder resistance for 3 turns, and 2 weaken for 3 turns. The key part here is that you see there are actually no percentage-based chance on these negative debuffs. If you look at most of the debuffing skills in Age of Wonders 4, there usually is a chance associated to it. So 60%, 90%, 30%, blah, blah, blah. But you see here, it doesn't mention any chance. And this means this skill, it actually bypasses all status resistance. So if you take a look here, this is the status resistance. This reduces the chance that the unit will be affected by negative status effects, and the current chance is a reduction of 47%. So essentially, if you have 100% chance to inflict curse, thunder defense, you only have a 50% chance to inflict it to this hero because of their status resistance. But because this is actually not 100%, it is always guaranteed. It doesn't matter if you have 1 status resistance or you have 690 status resistance. You will always be inflicting this debuff onto the enemy, and that is super duper powerful, okay? So, and the curse skill, it also, now we have the first thing is Plague Magic. All attacks and debuff abilities by you gain 90% base chance of inflicting disease for 3 turns. And what does disease do? We will hop back here. Why am I doing this? I can just stick to this. So disease reduces the enemy's resistance by 4. That's a lot, okay? That's actually a lot. He only has 2 like resistance. And the crazy part is that you can actually spread disease. It's like having COVID, right? Like COVID nerfs you by making you more vulnerable to magic attacks, and you also spread it to adjacent allies. So if you infect the enemy, like after a couple of turns, if they don't cleanse it, like their whole team will be diseased if they don't have immunity to it, like I think undead or something. But this is a very powerful debuff in my opinion, right? Especially if your build heavily gears towards magic damage. Now, the second part, Hex of Decay. Take a sip of my tea. So it's a debuff ability. No. So this basically allows all of your debuff abilities to gain 90% chance of inflicting decaying for 3 turns. Now, what does decaying do? The unit sustains 10 blight damage each turn and cannot regain hit points. Decay counters regeneration. So this is very powerful because any form of healing by the enemy, like if they just heal straight up, it will all be negated by decay. So if you have decay on the enemy just cannot heal. Unless they apply a stack of regeneration, which counters decay. But counters, it actually just means that regeneration and decaying, they will cancel each other out. So if you inflict decay on the enemy and their support brings 1 stack of regeneration onto them, then the decaying will be gone, but they also won't get to apply the regeneration, right? So this is actually very, very powerful. If the enemy does not have a source of regeneration, and they very well could lack a source of regeneration because certain supports don't offer regeneration, they just offer straight up heals, but decaying straight up counters that, alright? So if they don't have any counters to decaying in regeneration, you can handicap a battle right off the bat with decaying. Very good. And however, the thing to know is that this only applies to your debuff abilities, unlike Plague Magic, which applies to all your attacks and debuff abilities. So if you have like your Charge Strike, and this is a base attack, it's not a debuff ability. So if you click Plague Magic, then your Charge Strike, you see, okay, so this is like blah blah blah, and if I click onto this, your Charge Strike will actually get the disease tag. So your Charge Strike can inflict disease onto enemies, but if I click on Hex of Decay, you see nothing more appears. Disease is already here, Infecting was already here from our custom crafted weapon, which I will delve into later. It's freaking awesome. But you see, this will only buff your curse ability, which is a debuff magic ability. Am I recording? I am, good. Okay, so disease, decaying, and center defense, resistance, guaranteed. So now, regarding the curse tree, right, we have two paths to go down. So the one here is mass curse, modify and enhance curse. So curse now affects all targets in a 1 hex radius instead. What this means is that you can actually affect up to 6 enemy units with your curse right now. You can curse the enemies, inflict guaranteed center defense, guaranteed center resistance, and guaranteed weakened on 6 potential units. Alright? This is super powerful, that ignores all stats of resistance. Plus it also applies decaying and disease with a certain chance. So this is mass curse. You can affect up to 6 units with this mass curse, right? And now let's look at the other tree. So we click on this curse, and the other tree is weakening magic. Attacks and debuff abilities gain 90% base chance of inflicting weakened for 3 turns. Weaken is not it's not a very strong debuff, to be honest. In this game, you kind of just want to kill people faster, because most units, they have entity models. So if you deal damage to them, if you kill their units, they actually deal less damage back to you. So my opinion on this is that instead of you just want to weaken them and not do any damage to them, why not just deal straight up damage to them and make some weakened that way, right? So weaken makes the enemies deal less damage to you, but if you have, for example, just like disease, which makes you deal more damage to them, you deal more damage to them, and in turn they both deal less damage to you. So in my opinion, weakened is not a very good debuff. However, if you do play with Dark Culture, they have the unique synergy with weakened, you definitely can go with this. And if you have nothing to choose later down the line, you can definitely choose this, because it also applies to your base attacks. So it's definitely not bad. The second one is Hex of Disruption. Debuff abilities gain 90% base chance of inflicting Disrupted for 2 turns. Disrupted shuts off all of the unit enchantments on the units. This, if you don't know what unit enchantments are, is that the things you can get from the tomes. So for example, I used it was a very good run for me, so I had some pretty busted numbers. As you can see, like, I did a lot in the first 5 turns and I got all of these affinities. I think this was a moderately modest run for me, but no, just kidding. I used the console command to test out the game, as every scientist / gamer should have to explore about the game. But okay, for example, enchantments. No, that's not an enchantment. Anyways, come on, give me an enchantment. Oh yes, it's finally here. For example, enchantments for the new players out there, it's something that you can get on a tome, and which makes your units more powerful. But they are enchantments and not racial transformations, right? So these are 2 different types of buffs. So racial transformations applies to all of your racial units, and they don't usually require an upkeep, right? And they cannot be shut down in any form unless you kill the units. But enchantments, they require a certain amount of upkeep. They apply to all units of the same class, like of the mentioned class, not just your race, but they can be shut down by disrupting. So disrupting is actually a very, very powerful negative status effect. If your enemies in the mid to late game have a lot of enchantments stacked onto each other, and their strength largely relies on unit enchantments, if you have this ability, it could entirely shut down their power level, right? It will bring their power level from like over 9,000 to 69, and you can just roll them over with that, alright? But if the enemy goes for like a lot of race transformations, then it's useless, okay? And now we have the second line. So if you see like this lock icon on the hero tab, it means that these 2 are mutually exclusive. So if you choose one, you cannot choose the other. So what is the other option? It's a Frost Curse. Modify and enhance Curse. Curse now deals 30 frost damage. Curse gains 120% base chance of inflicting frozen for 1 turn. Okay. This only applies to 1 target, as opposed to the potential 6 targets you can get from Mass Curse. However, now you deal slightly more damage. 30 frost damage it's not much, but I guess it's something. And you gain a 120% base chance of inflicting frozen. Mind you, it is not a guaranteed chance. And you might think, okay, 120% base chance is quite high, but considering the fact that the units that you actually want to spend your curse to freeze will likely be a high tier, high value target. And what do high tier, high value targets usually have? They usually have very high status resistance. So the thing is, this 120% base chance will usually get reduced down to like 40 to like 60% base chance to freeze something. And the thing is, I have tested it out, I'm not entirely sure, but actually the frozen, it gets applied at the same time as like the Thunder Defense and Thunder Resistance. The Thunder Defense and Resistance also gives negative status resistance to the enemies, but the frozen is actually not applied after, it applies at the same time. So the frozen chance doesn't actually benefit from you shredding off the enemy's status resistance with Thunder Defense and Resistance, which is guaranteed. So in my testing, you want to freeze a high tier units, but you actually have a pretty damn low chance to actually freeze them. If this was a guaranteed, then I would say that these two could be actually situational depending on what you need. But right now, since this is not guaranteed and is actually pretty low in effect, inflicting a guaranteed Thunder Defense, Thunder Resistance, and weaken on all enemies in a 1 hex radius, which is potentially 6 enemies in total, is much more powerful than just potentially freezing someone or not, you know? So if you want to go down the curse tree, which I always recommend because it's a free action and it's a very powerful guaranteed just negative debuff, I always recommend going down the Mass Curse, right? If they buff the Frozen Curse to be guaranteed, it could be a different story, right? Okay, so now we finished the curse tree. And this Dark Ritual belongs to the Summoning Tree, which we will explain now. Okay, this Summoning Tree, it basically comes from the Ritualist, right? So the Ritualist has, Raise Undead. Friendly undead corpses revive with 60% of its total hit points. Non-undead corpses raise as a zombie. What this means is that you can revive one of your friendly undead units, like you can revive it, right, with 60% of its total hit points. But if it's anything other than undead, if they don't have the undead racial take on them, then it doesn't matter if you raise a tier 5 unit, they will always come back as a tier 1 zombie. Alright, so this has its limits. And it also consumes 1 single action, which is the same in the case of a Death Knight. It's not a free action. This is not a very good skill in my opinion, but the latter two, or particularly the Bone Wyvern Keeper, is very good. So, we have Zombie Keeper. You basically summon a free zombie at the start of battle. It doesn't work in water combat. So anything, if you're battling on land or whatever, not water, you summon a zombie at the start of the battle for free, with no action points. Just automatically the zombie pops out of existence and starts to help you. Zombies are not really that strong, like 50 HP, 10 melee attacks, they walk on land with only 32 movement. Nothing phenomenal at all, it's like a pretty just normal, weak tier 1 unit. But the thing we want is Wyvern Keeper. We summon a Bone Wyvern at the start of battle. It doesn't work in water combat. This skill replaces a skill from Zombie Keeper. So if you learn Zombie Keeper and then you learn Wyvern Keeper, then you no longer have Zombie Keeper, you only have Bone Wyvern Keeper. What does a Bone Wyvern do? It is completely worth it, alright? It's a very good unit, especially in the early game. So it has 70 HP, it's a fighter unit, plus it also flies. This is actually very crucial. Flying unit with 40 movement points with also Draconic Rage, which makes it deal more damage when its HP drops lower, right? So the best part about this unit is that in early games, when you are mostly fighting like tier 1 or tier 2 units, just random Marauder guards, like for example, I don't know, like these guys, or I think I'm on High World Threat or something, yeah. But in the early game, if you're fighting mostly low tier units, just having a tier 2 unit on your side for free every turn that respawns in every turn at full health is incredibly powerful for your early game tempo. And due to the fact that it is flying, it will probably outpace most of your units. And if you only do auto combat with the AI, this essentially means that the Bone Wyvern will actually fly to the front and tank most of the enemy's damage to keep your cultural or your actual units safe. So every turn it will fly up to the front, soak up the damage, allowing your units to deal more damage and retaliate more efficiently. This is incredibly powerful in the early game, but it definitely falls off in the late game. Because a tier 2 unit in the early game where you're mostly fighting tier 1 and 2 units is very powerful, but in the late game, if you're facing 18 versus 18 with tier 4 and 5 units, a tier 2 unit isn't gonna do jack, alright? So, in fact, I would recommend that always go for these 3 in the early game if you're playing as a Death Knight. Or even Ritualist. Ritualist is like, it's more arguable because this is also great for early game tempo. We will be making our Ritualist video later, and you can also check out Windslayer's Ritualist video. Mine will definitely be inspired by his. I will leave the video link down below. So, I will always recommend you to go with these 3 skill points first, if you have a Death Knight hero. Because going for this first, as I've mentioned before, is very powerful in the early game. Going for it, the more late you go for it, the less value this has. But it has incredible value in the early game, alright? So, and now we have completed this tree, oh well, not quite. So then we have infected summons. Units summoned by this hero have Aura of Disease. Aura of Disease is the same thing as, oh, okay, it's not quite. So at the end of this unit's turn, all adjacent enemy units have a base 60% chance of becoming diseased. And disease, as we've already talked about before, this basically allows them to spread COVID, alright? So basically, all of your summon units, they have COVID, and they will spread the COVID to adjacent enemies at the end of the turn. And when the adjacent enemies get COVID, they will also infect their allies with it. So it could potentially be very powerful. But, there's a big but, very, very big and thick but. So yeah, like this hero gains immunity to disease. I mean, it's a nice one, you are immune to disease. Okay, that's good. Whatever. The big but is that this thing actually doesn't apply to the Raise Undead summon that you get. So if you revive an undead unit that is like not your Bone Wyvern or something, they actually do not benefit from this Aura of Disease. Correct me if I'm wrong, but like in the 3 tests that I did, it doesn't work. And if you do Dark Ritual and you revive things or summon things in that sense from Dark Ritual, they also do not get the Aura of Disease. So this effectively, it only affects your Bone Wyvern. Spending a whole skill point to just give your Bone Wyvern an Aura of Disease and giving yourself immunity to disease, it's arguable, the value. And moving on to Dark Ritual, this is even more arguable. So what this does is that enemies in a 1 hex radius sustains 10 frost damage. All corpses in a 1 hex radius turn to decaying zombie units. Theoretically, it could be very strong. If you have units just dead in a 1 hex radius, which is 7 units maximum, you can actually bring out 7 freaking zombies just from this skill alone. But from what I've noticed, it's a full action point, so you have to stand still while using it. And as a Death Knight, you definitely need to research the melee mage if you want to make use of it, because Death Knights usually want to go into melee range of enemies, and if you're in melee range of enemies, I don't think you can actually use Dark Ritual unless you research the melee mage. So if you want to use this, you have to research the melee mage. But you can already use Curse without melee mage. It sounds funny, melee mage. Right? So, effectively, if you want to use Dark Ritual, you have to kind of research like 3 things that you would not use otherwise to make up for it. And it theoretically could be worth it and very strong if you are doing if you're doing manual combats a lot. The AI hates using this, in the sense that it either doesn't use it or it doesn't use it well at all. Usually, all it can revive are 2 zombies. Sometimes maybe 3 if you're really lucky, but usually I just notice it's like 2 zombies, and that's all you get for an entire turn. And you spend 3 skill points just for this 2 zombies. It's, in my opinion, not very worth it when you could be putting your skill points elsewhere. Alright? Okay, so that goes for the summoning tree. So you definitely want these 3 first, and if you want to go for the curse tree, you want to go down this line. Alright? I'm not telling you which ones, like, you could actually go for the curse tree, like, you know, first, earlier than the Bone Wyvern, but as I've reasoned before, the Bone Wyvern is very strong in the early game, but falls off the later you get it. Alright, so it's better if you get it earlier than the other skills. Okay, so we have finished these 2 now. Let me take another sip. I should get my stroke candy, like this is way too much talking. Ugh. Cut. Alright, I am back. Okay, now let us proceed on to the warrior tree. Namely, we'll just go with it. We have 2 different branches, the berserker / crit branch and the melee branch. So first we get knight, +1 defense, +10 maximum hit points. Very solid ability, honestly. I do like it. This knight, as I've said before, it struggles with survivability. You want to hit enemies at close range, but many times you will find out that they can deal a lot of damage, but they also die very quickly. They're quite squishy. So any form of tankiness is appreciated. So this is a good skill to get. And now you have 2 skills. So either you get Frenzy. So when you land an attack, this unit will gain a stack of Strengthen, which gives you plus 10% damage. You can get it up to 5 times for a 50% damage boost. Pretty strong, but if you're going for like a charging weapon and it only does a single attack, I believe it only gives you 1 stack of Strengthen, so you actually stack it up quite slowly. However, if we compare it to Second Wind, now this is a freaking epic ability, alright? So it's a free action, you use it to buff yourself, to give yourself 1 hex of movement, so you can move 1 hex more now for 1 turn. You gain Slippery, so this unit does not trigger opportunity attack, which means that if you want to move away from an enemy that's in your face, you can just move away without them actually hitting you. It's pretty good. And now you also get to heal for 15 hit points, right? It's a free action. You can use it every time after you kill something. This synergizes extraordinarily well with Killing Momentum, which is a final boss ability that you get as a Death Knight, which grants you 1 action point when you kill something. Alright? So basically you can bonk someone, kill someone, and then you regain this action point and then you can kill something again. Or not, just damage them. But effectively, if you plan your turns out correctly, you can grant your Death Knight 2 actions per turn, as opposed to 1 action per turn of almost everything else. Alright? So this is very good. So you kill something, So you use second winds, heal more movements, debris, you kill something, trigger killing momentum, and you also get to refresh second wind again. You can move 1 hex more, and you get to heal more. It's a very awesome synergy of the warrior class, which is now inherited by the Death Knight class. Right. So if we go down this line, we have just a generic plus 10% melee damage, same here. And then we have weakening aura. So at the end of the turn, you inflict, I believe it's guaranteed weaken to all adjacent enemies. It's nice. As I said, weaken is not that strong, but if you're playing Dark Culture, this could actually be invaluable, right? Because Dark synergizes very well with weakened, and sometimes you struggle to inflict that many weakened on enemies, but with this one, guarantee weaken on everyone adjacent, could be very powerful. And all the trees end here at Unyielding. At the start of the turn, this unit dispels 1 negative status effect. I believe this is actually not 1 negative status effect, but 1 stack of negative status effect. So if enemies have inflicted 5 thunder resistance on you, you can actually just cleanse it straight out. You don't cleanse one thunder resistance to make it 4. You cleanse all 5, making you have 0 thunder defense, making you very clean, very fresh, and very you just feel unburdened by the burdens of life, right? So it's pretty good. And if we go down the other tree, you get some more survivability, plus 15 hit points, and terrifying aura. So at the end of this unit's turn, adjacent enemies lose 5 morale. Doesn't work on units with this ability though. So morale builds in the current patch is a little weaker than it has been before, because all the heroes and rulers, they will get additional morale for their entire army, up to 15 I believe. Yeah, if they just gain their renown level. So everyone in this current patch, they have more base morale than before, and if you want to really play around with morale, it is harder. You are climbing up a taller hill, so to say. However, it does have some pretty good synergies if you're playing with the Doom, Tome of the Doom Herald. They have, so this tome, right? Tome of the Doom Herald, or is it Dark Affinity Shadow? Tome of the Doom Herald, which just does, morale things, Joy Siphoners, Cruel Weaponry. You can definitely go for this. And one synergy I've discovered was the signature skills, which I won't be delving into too much in this video. It's already going to be long enough, and yeah. So if we pick the Shadow, and if we get up to Adept of Shadow, then you actually have this skill. So Spirit Breaker Aura. Adjacent enemy units lose morale 50% faster. So it's actually a pretty awesome ability to pair up with Terrifying Aura. And 50% of 5 is 2.5, right? But these numbers only work in whole numbers in this game, natural numbers, just integers in this game, alright? So it actually rounds up. So essentially, the enemies don't lose 7.5 morale, they actually lose 8 morale if you have these two things researched. And 8 morale per turn, you just take that away from them, all adjacent enemies, it could actually be pretty powerful, just to keep in mind, right? And so we did these 2 trees, and now we move on to the center one. So you could forego one as a vigor or one as a fighting to go for Sundering Sweep. This is actually one of the skills that I really overlooked in my past plays, but I've only come about to understand its power now. So what this does is that it deals damage in a 1 hex cone. It deals slightly less damage than you would deal on a charge attack on your base weapon, but you do deal it in a 1 hex cone, which means that you can deal damage up to 3 enemies. It inflicts guaranteed thunder defense, guaranteed thunder resistance, ignore this is from my item, and and this is also from my item. Okay, so as a base functionality, it deals damage to all enemies in a 1 hex cone, inflicts guaranteed some defense and resistance. The key part here is that not only is this a base attack, it's also a debuff ability. So these 2 tags are the things you want to look on, so you want to find on Death Knight and Mage heroes. So you want base attacks because a lot of the things in this game, it only buffs your base attacks. If you have like non-base attacks, fancier attacks, it's not gonna get buffed by many things, right? And debuff abilities. Now where does this ring a bell? It actually rings a bell here. If you have curse, right? So if you go down the curse line, so plague magic affects your attack and debuff abilities, but Hex of Decay, it only affects debuff abilities. To inflict decay, a very powerful debuff, but only on debuff abilities. So before you were wondering, okay, we only have like one debuff ability on the Death Knight. It's a mass curse, so it's very powerful on 6 units, but we have like a 3-turn cooldown, I believe. Yeah, so you can only use it every 4 turns. However, now we also have another way of triggering these debuff enhancements. So in fact, you can actually like also click on the disruption in the late game. If your enemy has a lot of enchantments, you can have 2 ways of inflicting decaying disease, weakened, and disrupted on the enemies. So one is a mass curse on 6 targets, and the other is sundering sweep, which is on 3 targets. It's very powerful. You see, it got buffed by all of these decayed, weakened, disrupting disease, blah blah blah. So it's a very good ability. I do recommend you to research this if you don't, instead of like the other things, if you don't have enough skill points. If you have enough skill points, definitely go for this, and then go for these if you have enough skill points, but prioritize this. So for example, if you want to go down this tree, click on Knight, click here, and then I would honestly, like, I will go for some more survivability, especially in the early game where the Death Knight is like really squishy. Before you get really good items online, you just want them to survive, to debuff the enemies, sometimes kill some people, but yeah. Vigor, and then you go Sundering Sweep. So now I'm basically demonstrating, if you go down a certain line, this is the order I will go down for. I'm not recommending you to like choose this line over this line, but yeah. Okay, and then you could go for either of these, to be honest. Weaken if you have synergy with it, and Morale if you have synergy with it, right? And you can, for example, go for Morale, and then go for Unyielding, which is very nice, as we've explained before. So now you actually have 2 options to go for. One is you gain Will Breaker. So it gives you Vicious Killer and Will Breaker. Vicious Killer basically allows you to inflict increased morale penalties when killing an enemy. Affects enemy units up to 3 hexes. I believe when you kill something, basically enemies' morale are gonna be more shattered. I forgot the actual number. Was it like a 50% chance more loss, or like a 100% chance, or like 100% morale loss or something? But whatever. Or it's a base morale value loss. I don't know. But basically, if you do morale builds, this is very powerful. And guaranteeing, well, granted that your Death Knight can kill things, right? If your Death Knight cannot kill something, then however vicious he is only a paper tiger. Now, we move on to Will Breaker. When this unit kills, enemies in range 3 of the target suffer 2 weakened and remorse. I believe this is actually very powerful. And I believe it is guaranteed. So basically, when you kill an enemy, all enemy in a 3 hex radius, so that's actually a very big radius, they will all suffer 2 weakened, guaranteed, and 2 remorse. So if you're going for like weakened builds with Dark and morale builds with like Doom Herald, I definitely recommend going for this. This is such a good skill. You can like handicap entire enemy armies with this. It's very good, right? The other thing is War Seeker. This used to be my always go-to, but in the last patch they nerfed it. So when this unit kills, you gain War Seeker for 2 turns, and it can stack up to 3 times. War Seeker basically allows you to gain 10% more damage and 10 max HP. So if you kill 3 people, you will get 30% damage increase and a 30% max HP increase. It used to be you can stack up to 5 times and it doesn't have an expiration date. That's what I remember. So now it's like severely nerfed, but it's still good, right? You can gain up to 30% max hit points. That is a lot. It's like a 30% increase to your effective HP. And you also gain 30% more damage on your attacks, which allow you to kill things more effectively. So honestly, it depends on you, right? So either you just make your Death Knight just stronger straight out, or you just, you synergize your Death Knight more with your morale / weakening build. Yeah. And then, as we explained before, I'm just gonna pick War Seeker for old time's sake, right? War Seeker on the Warrior Dragons, they were epic, yeah. Okay, and then we get Killing Momentum, we explained before. And this is a payout for a Berserker / critical Death Knight. So if your Death Knight can kill things, this is awesome. But if your Death Knight cannot kill things, which is actually a build that I will recommend later on the line, a build that focuses on survivability and debuffing and summoning as opposed to killing things, then this is not so valuable. But if your Death Knight kills things, awesome stuff. Okay, so here we have it, right? How you can go down this tree. This tree is honestly very versatile, as opposed to, the curse tree where you kind of always want to go down for mass curse, and you can pick up disruption and weakened later down the line. I only recommend picking up this in the late game, or when your enemies have a lot of enchantments stacked onto each other. If you're doing this in the early game where the enemies barely have any enchantments, don't do it. It's useless. Alright. Okay. So now we move on to the left tree, our final tree. Okay, finally. How long has this video been going on? I've been constantly rambling. But yes. Okay, Frenzy, we've explained before. You land an attack, you gain more damage. It's weaker on a charge attack, so on a charge strike if you have, for example, a lance equipped, but it is stronger if you have, for example, repeating like a sword. This shows that it's actually Stop. This is actually repeating, so if you have a repeating attack, every time you strike, so you can strike 3 turns in a row, right? So you gain 3 stacks of strength, but if you have a charge strike, then you only get 1 stack. Just something to know, right? It's not very crucial, but whatever. And then we separate down into these two. So first is you go for the crit. So 20% crit chance. And if you do decide to go for the crit, which I always used to go for it because I play Barbarian a lot, and Barbarian have this special synergy with crit is that they deal more crit damage as opposed to other cultures, right? So by definition, crit allows you to essentially deal 50% more damage. So if you, for example, take Keen Edge, grant you a 20% crit chance, and you hit something 1,000 times, the end result will be a 10% increase to your total damage. If crit damage was 100% more damage, then it will be a 20% net increase in damage. But it's only 150 in this game, so it's a 10% increase in total damage. All right, that's something you can keep in mind. If you're just going for crit, divides the crit chance by 2, and that's the actual damage buff you will get. So effectively, for damage, these two are the same. Gain more damage, but this is slightly more powerful because it also affects a mass curse, right? Curse can also crit, I believe, yeah. So you can deal slightly more damage to enemies, and when you crit, I believe you also reduce the enemy's morale. So crit, in this case, is actually more beneficial than just flat up damage boost. Yeah. So we go down the crit line, so 20% crit chance, and now we face. Now we're not going down this line, we're going for the critical tree, the critical warrior, alright? So, we can either go for critical momentum, which makes you gain 10 hit points and hastened when you make a critical hit. Heal is, well, basic, it's good. And hasten is basically you gain very fast movement, which allows you to move 6 hexes in combat and 48 movement points in the world map. So you can move a lot faster now, and you also get an additional retaliation attack. Right? So basically, if enemies hit you, you can hit them 1 more time back. It's pretty neat, and it counters slowed. So if you get slowed, and if you applied hasten, if you crit and applies hasten to yourself, then the hasten and the slow will cancel out, and you will get neither. Okay. And the other one is execute. This one is actually kind of an interesting ability. So what this does is that it's a free action that allows you to have a slight chance of instantly killing an injured target. And the more injured the target is, the higher the chance, right? What I've noticed is that if you're playing in manuals, you can actually set this up to be a very, very interesting like triple kill scenario if you have killing momentum built out already. So basically, you charge up to someone, you poke them, you kill them, and you trigger killing momentum, which gives you one action point back, and then you use execute on a low health target, you kill them, but because this is a free action, you can still poke another enemy and you kill them. So effectively killing 3 enemies just in your turn, right? However, that's for manual combats in the ideal scenario. In auto combats, the AI just does not know how to use this like at all. Like if you have killing momentum built in already, the AI will just like move up to someone like low health that you could already kill with your charge strike. They will move up to that person and they will use execute. And you will waste the execute if you don't actually kill them. And then you still have to like kill them with your charge strike again, which effectively means this actually did nothing. Or you actually do kill them and you gain your killing momentum and then you can kill someone else. But the problem is, if you, this is so funny, like the AI just does these flabbergasting, like the kind of dumb moves that really flabbergast me, alright? So the AI can just move up to someone, it will use execute on someone you can already kill, and if you kill them, you will gain killing momentum, which actually means that you skipped out on a whole charge attack. So now you only get to kill 2 people if this succeeds instead of 3 if you were doing it in manual combats. And guess what? You can already kill a low health target with your normal charge attack already. So execute is redundant. Borderline, well, no, at the end of the day, alright, it was borderline useless if you're playing with auto combat most of the time. However, at the end of the day, if you're playing with manual battle, you can set this up to have a triple kill on your side and just instantly fulfill the conditions for War Seeker and just instantly debuff all the enemies into oblivion, alright? So it could be very powerful if you're manualing it. If you're just relying on autos, don't count on the AI doing this well. They will botch it, trust me. So if you're going for the crit line, always, if you're going for like autos against the AI, go for this, alright? Okay, and then now Grim Executioner, pretty straightforward. When you kill another unit, it gains 3 fortune. Basically, you gain 30% crit chance. Solid. And so if you kill something, you effectively have like 50% crit chance, plus some other enchantments or whatever, some other items, you can get up to like 70, 80, 90%, right? Pretty easily. And, okay, the end of the line for this is Resurgence. In the beginning, I really underestimated, but it could be very, very good on a Death Knight. So what this does is when the unit dies in combat, it is revived at the end of combat if its owner is victorious. Revived units are brought back with 50% of their max hit points. What this does is that, for example, if you have an army of like tough units, but your Death Knight just charged in and killed himself right off the bat, and your other tough units are like, look, we are tough, but we are short and we are slow. Imagine them as doors, right? You just kill yourself, now we lost our ruler, but we can still win the battle on our own. So if you do not have Resurgence, then the doors will just spit on the Death Knight's corpse and just leave. But if you have Resurgence, the doors will conduct a first aid on your Death Knight after they win the battle, so effectively you did not lose your hero, right? And the thing with Death Knight as opposed to a warrior is that, as I mentioned before, they are very easy to kill. They are pretty squishy, so if you have a strong stack with the Death Knight, and for example you're entering into like a silver or gold wonder where you are certain that you can't beat the wonder, you can overpower the enemy, but you cannot predict what your Death Knight will actually do, and maybe it will just kamikaze and suicide itself into the enemy, then this is a pretty good ability. Because if you lose your ruler in one of those risky fights, it's a very, very big penalty for you. So this is actually pretty worth it to get, alright? Okay, so now this is a crit line. Don't go for this, just go for this. If you have synergy with crit, I recommend you to always go for this, alright? And plus this, where is it? Yeah, this thing, even if you don't have a high crit chance, like, because Mass Curse, you also can crit on it, you can actually trigger it more often than not. So, plus the critical momentum, right? Killing momentum. So you can actually trigger this multiple times. I believe it doesn't trigger, like, if you crit on all 6 targets on the Mass Curse, it doesn't heal you for 60 and gives you like 6 hasten. It only heals you for 10 and gives you hasten, right? But it's still pretty good. Okay, now we move on to the other part. So Frenzy, and we move on to Thundering Strikes. This makes your base melee and physical range attacks gain base 60% chance of inflicting thunder defense. Effects and Demolisher this is ignorable. Effects are increased for non-repeating attacks. So basically, if you have like a single attack non-repeating one, like a charge strike, you will actually gain a 90% chance, I believe, of inflicting thunder defense. It's okay. 90% chance for one stack of thunder defense, like, it's fine, it's alright. It's not amazing, but sure. But the amazing part is what you can get afterwards. So, you can actually get Reckless Rage, which is an always hit ability. You gain, and always hit on yourself is a buff ability on yourself. I don't know why I mentioned that, but it's a free action, that's what's important. You gain 30% attack damage for 3 turns, but you gain 1 thunder defense and 1 thunder resistance in exchange. So basically you take off all of your clothes and you just charge into the enemy like a berserker. Alright, this is the berserker tree. Very good. 30% attack damage just straight up, and for 3 turns is pretty awesome. And considering that you can actually cleanse negative status effects from yourself, 1 thunder defense and 1 thunder resistance isn't really that much. If enemies stack like 3 thunder resistance on you and you stack 1 more on yourself, you can just cleanse it right off the bat next turn with this, right? So effectively, it's kind of a 30% damage boost for very minimal setbacks. This is much better than the freaking execution, alright? This is so much better. So we go for Reckless Rage, and then we go for Berserker's Rage. When this unit's total hit points reach 33% or lower, it becomes Berserk for 1 turn. So what does Berserk do? Berserk allows you to be, as a Berserker, you are uncontrollable, so you cannot control the unit anymore through your keyboard or mouse. The AI will take over. So it will always attack the closest enemy target, and if no enemy targets is in range, it will attack its allies. But this is not that big of a deal, because usually you can just, it's not like if it's in melee range and nothing is nearby, it will just attack its ally in melee range. No, if it can actually run up to an enemy, like for like 3-4 hexes, and attacks the enemy, it will not attack your allies that's just like right next to it. So it's not that big of a deal. This is not that big of a setback, okay? And this unit is immune to morale effects. This is actually very good. So this basically means that if you do any sort of negative morale, so like these or like these guys' morales, if a unit is berserk, their morale will not drop at all. Very good. And damage penalties from casualty is negated. This ties back into why weakened is a weak status debuff. It's that so casualty, basically when you deal damage to something, they will lose units, and because they have less units, they will deal less damage back onto you, right? But this doesn't really matter, like the casualty doesn't matter entirely at all for hero units, because you only have 1 unit. Either you are alive and deal full damage, or you die and you deal no damage. There is no in between, right? But basically, the thing to know is that you're immune to morale effects, and Berserk it still counts as a negative debuff in the end, I believe, because you basically cannot control the piece anymore, right? That's the biggest downside to this. However, the upside is that you gain steadfast. Basically, this allows your unit to cannot have fewer than 1 hit points, so the unit actually cannot die this turn. And this is pretty awesome. Why? Because as we mentioned before, the Death Knight is squishy. However, if you reach 1/3 or lower of your HP, you actually cannot be killed that turn. So the enemy cannot focus down on your hero that turn, which is very, very powerful. Effectively, it allows your hero to live 1 turn longer, and 1 turn could make all the difference in winning and losing a battle. So it's a very precious ability. I really like it. It saves my Death Knight many times in a campaign. So, and with the Berserker tree, you get a safety net of Steadfast from this, and you also get a safety net from Resurgence. So this effectively kind of mitigates the risk that you have to take on by using a high damage but squishy glass cannon type Death Knight, right? And then you go down here, for example. Okay, so I think that was it for all of the 4 trees. I hope I hope I've managed to explain things well, and you've learned a lot from this if you are a beginner. But now let's dive into the specific builds that we have recommended. Basically, they are 3 builds, right? So now we move on to this part. Oh wait, ignore this. How to poop in bathtub. That's a little better. Or is it? In bed. I still remember like the Johnny Depp Amber Heard stuff. It's so funny. But yeah. Anyways, okay guys. So we have version 1. I suck with the drawing on my laptop. Berserker will just be alright. 1 Berserker. Okay, so what do we go first? As we've mentioned before, we always want to wait. I think there was like a pointer, you know, like a laser pointer or something. Yeah, like this. Yeah, good. Now it's like red. So you see, oh damn, this is so fun. Okay, we go 1, 2, 3. Basically, we go for the Wyvern Keeper. And the Raise Undead is not a very useful ability until you get Wyvern Keeper, because you can actually revive the Wyvern Keeper when it dies and tanks everything for your team. So this is actually very, very powerful. Having a tier 2 unit in the early game, as I've explained before, is very, very powerful, but falls off in the late game, so get this as soon as possible to get as much benefit from this as possible. And then I would recommend you to either go for Curse, so because this is a free action, you gain no downside from taking this. It's very powerful, 2 guaranteed thunder resistance, defense, and weakened right off the bat. It's very, very good. Free action. You can do this next, but I sometimes also find myself taking this next because it gives you 1 defense and 10 max hit points to make yourself a little tankier, so that before you get, you know, these tools like the Steadfast and the Resurgence to keep your warrior alive longer, you do need a bit of tankiness first. So you get this, and since we're already here, just get the heal, you know. This is effectively like a free heal every single time you enter into a battle, and if on the off chance you kill something, you also heal again. So free actions are always good, they do something pretty nice, and always get them. Okay. So either you go here, and then come here, and then pick up Curse, or you just do here, and then pick up Curse, and then you pick up this, and then pick up this. And if you're going for the Berserker build, as I mentioned here, the philosophy is essentially you want to deal as high of a damage as possible, but you aren't afraid of dying. You are squishy, but you aren't afraid of dying. Because as we've mentioned before, we have the Steadfast from Berserker's Rage, and also Resurgence. So we do have 2 safety nets here, right? So we go down here, here, right? And then here, and then Reckless Rage for the 30% sweet damage, and then the first safety net, second safety net, and then we go for the Cleanse, and then we go for either, you know, Will Breaker or the War Seeker. They're both good. I can't really decide between the 2. It really depends on what you're going for. Think for yourself in this case, and then Killer Momentum. This is very crucial. Killing momentum is very crucial for the big damage berserker type. All right, and you see here we still have 9 skill points left. You can just do whatever you want after that. Pick up some signature skills or pick up some champion like Dragon Lord blah 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 skills, or you know, like you can just skip out on some of these and do the signature skills first or whatever, depends on you. But this is the general structure, the skeleton of our build. All right, you can elaborate on top of this. This is a B-Cup Berserker build, right? And now we have our critical Death Knight, no longer the Berserker Death Knight, right? So what we have here is a critical 2C, yes, 1B, 2C. So this one has bigger boobs, I like that. Okay, so we have, my jokes are so weird and they're not even funny. Oh yeah, why am I laughing? I'm so weird. Anyway, that's 1, as we mentioned before, this doesn't change. 2, because it's just so good in the early game. 3, and then we go for, well, for example, we can go for Curse 4, and then we go for some more tankiness 5, and then we go for those free action point 6. So basically the philosophy here is that along with this, why we didn't go for like this line down here first is that we want to maximize our damage, right? And the way to maximize damage is by going through this tree right here. And same for our Berserker critical Death Knight. Oh lord, whatever. Can I redo this? Yes, good, undo. And we go for 5, 6, this is 7, and then we go for the 20% crit chance, and then we go for the heal on crit and, oh lord, and the hastened, giving us more mobility, and then giving us 3 fortune upon a kill, more crit chance, now we have 50, and then we have 1 safety net. So this one is actually less safe than the Berserker, strangely. The critical Death Knight is more Berserker than the Berserker Death Knight. But yeah, I do recommend kind of the Berserker Death Knight over the critical Death Knight if you're not playing around with crit, like the Barbarians, for example. And then now you go 12, oh lord, what just happened? Okay, whatever. And then 13, either one of these works, as I've mentioned before, and then we go for 14, right? So in these two cases, we both end 14 on critical momentum, and then you can choose to get the Mass Curse line, which I always recommend. In fact, if you do value the Mass Curse line, if you're doing like a debuff build, and so if you have a lot of synergies with debuff at the start of the game, you can actually, like, after you go for Wyvern Keeper, just go down the skill right off the bat. But I still would recommend getting these two for some basic tankiness and healing, and then going down this tree, right? So that is also viable. And remember, always go for Mass Curse, don't pick the Frozen Curse. Well, you can try it, definitely try it, but when you test it out, you'll realize Mass Curse is just superior. I think Frozen Curse should be buffed a little for like a guaranteed Frozen, but you know, that's just my silly opinion. And yeah, so now we have 6 skill points left after you go for the Mass Curse, and yeah, you can just elaborate on your own. All right. Okay, so and now we have the Archlich Death Knight. Okay, so the priority here is that instead of going for this tree, we go for this tree for some more survival and crucially the debuffing parts, right? So first, oh, why is it so ugly? Damn it. Okay, wait, I can draw like a PP here. Yep, good. And then a boopy. Good, good. Okay. 1, 2, 1, 2, 3. And then we have, where, oh, that's so silly. Okay, 3, and you have the option, like, you can just go for 4, and then 5, 6. Basically, I recommend you, like, getting, basically, like, these 3 always first. I think that's the ideal way to play, if you want to, like, min-max everything. You can go for something else, but do know that this is the best in the early game, and it falls off the later you pick it. So 1, 2, 3, and then this is the 4th, and that's the 5th, and that's the 6th. Or you can do 1, 2, 3. That's the 4th, that's the 5th, and that's the 6th. So these 3 are exchangeable, but I do think if you want to min-max them, you should pick like these skills first, and then you can go down whichever line you want, right? So for the Archlich, this prioritizes so debuffs and summoning. Well, they all have the same stuff, but instead of going down this tree, we go down this tree. So now for the 15 hit points, and then for the sweet cone debuff attack. And then we have the weakening or the morale aura. It depends on you. You can go for either. We go for 9, and then for the cleanse, the 10, and then either one of these is fine. It's very good skills. 11, and then we go for 12, killing momentum. However, the thing to note is that, oh yes, we forgot to mention. Okay, so for the Archlich, you actually want. So for the Berserker and the critical, you actually always want to go for a charging weapon. A mount is always nice for the skill points because you are a Death Knight. What is a knight without a horse, right? Or you could be a centaur. I hope they add like centaurs in this game. That would be awesome. Maybe in Giant Kings. So like you could go for a charge weapon, but like I would recommend like going for a lance and a mount. If you can find one, it will be awesome. Because this allows for you to get a charge strike. So lance and a mount for Berserker and a critical Death Knight. However, if you're going for the Archlich, where you will be prioritizing your survival, that's a different case. You won't be going for a lance or a charging weapon. You definitely want a shield with you. And one of the best starting weapons that my friend Godson mentioned to me is that you can actually get a, I believe it was from your Pantheon, you can actually get a, where is it? Give me all the tier 1s. You can actually get the Umbral Sword, not this. Where is it? Oh wait, I can't see it. Anyways, there is a certain Umbral Sword that you can get, which actually gives you the, wait, we can go into the Item Forge, and yeah, this sword thing. So if you select this sword, in your ruler faction creation page, you will actually get the sword and you will get a pretty interesting ability that is like you can actually pull enemies towards you. I believe it's actually not here, but if you do pick this and you have it on your Pantheon, it is unlocked. It will unlock a special ability that allows you to pull enemies towards you with a single action point while dealing some damage. Very, very good starting weapon. So if you're going for the Archlich, just go for a regular ass sword or an axe, whatever you prefer, but the key is you gotta have a shield, right? So, and you get a shield, so this makes you a bit more tanky against non-flanking attacks, and you also have a better defense mode, but you don't really want to enter defense modes with Death Knight since you have a lot to do, but it could still be beneficial. And the problem in this case is that since we are prioritizing survival and utility, so the focus on this build is just purely debuffs and summons, as opposed to debuff, summon, and dealing big damage, you're prioritizing more like a debuff with this skill and more survivability, as I mentioned before. Good PP, now it's face, and it's like a birthday hat. Yeah, okay. If you have, what was I talking about? I was distracted. Basically, if you have the Archlich Death Knight and you have a shield and a sword, you actually don't really want to be getting killing momentum or these two, because your damage will probably be like pretty abysmal in all honesty, and you won't really kill things that often, and killing momentum isn't that valuable on something with like a triple attack, because killing momentum only restores one action point, right? So a charging strike is one action point, so effectively if you have a charge weapon, you regain all of your damage from killing momentum, right? But if you do just have like a repeating attack when you just get 1/3 of your damage back through killing momentum, it's not very preferable. You don't trigger that often, and you don't trigger the Will Breaker that often either. So these two are actually almost skippable on the Death Knight. Which at some point you start to wonder, why don't you just go for a defender instead, right? But the Death Knight is unique because it offers a lot of debuffs, guaranteed 2 stacks of Thunder resistant defense, and weakened, very strong in a massive area of, it can hit up to 6 units. Plus, you also get a very strong early game tempo play, which allows you to mitigate your casualties and just be a lot stronger in the early game than a defender, for example. And yeah, another synergy to mention is if you are going for this build, or even if like any other build, like Death Knight synergizes so freaking well with, again, as my friend Gotchson mentioned, the Tome of Pandemonium Chaos. So what does the Poem of Pandemonium, the Tome of Pandemonium, what does it do? So you can summon a Chaos Eater, it's a pretty good battle mage unit, and you have Mass Hysteria. This is actually a pretty good debuff ability. It can inflict Insanity and Berserk and all that good stuff. This is whatever. And this is what we're targeting. Infectious Insanity is also very good, but it's not what we're going for here, right? Vessels of Chaos. It turns the target race into a conduit for chaotic energies, granting them 10% damage for each of the target's negative status effects, stacks up to 3 times. So if your target has 3 negative status effects, which is our Sundering Curse, basically. So this is one type. So if the enemy has 3 types of negative status effects, that should be a better description. You deal 30% more damage. All of your racial units deal 30% more damage because of the Tome of Pandemonium. And the thing with Curse is that it is guaranteed. It bypasses all status resistance. It bypasses everything, right? So this is automatically 30% damage buff for all of your units that are racial, and plus the enemy is also more softened up by the Thunder resistance and Thunder defense. And with this and Pandemonium, you can actually just shred through high tier units like they're butter, and it's a very, very powerful combo. And yeah, but you can also have some other signature skill synergies and whatnot. This is a wonderful, wonderful game with so many synergies and so many things to discover. But that'll be it for me today. A basic Death Knight build geared for the beginners, the newbies out there, just like I was a couple of months ago. And yeah, I hope you enjoyed the video, and if you want to learn how to build a Spellblade or any other hero classes in the future, you can check out the Spellblade video from I believe it was like 1 week ago, something like that. And the other videos for all the other hero classes will be coming out very soon as well, if I don't procrastinate.